What is the difference between an HR Director and a Chief People Officer, or CHRO? If this is something that you've been wondering about, you are certainly not alone. It's a question that I know so many people have, and to help answer it, I've spent the past 5 months interviewing amazing Chief People Officers about their careers. If we haven't met before, hello, I'm Fay Wallis, a career and leadership coach who specialises in supporting HR professionals to have successful and fulfilling careers. I'm also the creator of the Essential HR Planner and the Inspiring HR Leadership Programme, as well as being the host of this podcast. If you're a regular listener to the show or watcher, if you're watching along on YouTube, welcome back. It's always fantastic to have you here, and I hope you're going to really enjoy this episode and find it helpful. I feel so incredibly grateful to all of the Chief People Officers who gave up their time to talk to me and to you, to share all of their insights and learnings about the role, about what it takes to succeed as a Chief People Officer and what the role is really like. If you want to hear all of the Chief People Officer interviews in full, I did record them all and I released them as earlier episodes of this podcast. So just hop back to any of the 11 episodes before this one and you'll be able to watch the whole thing. But from now on, I've decided that it will be helpful to share some of the key insights and learnings with you from those episodes. So what were the things that I noticed were the same? Maybe what were some of the insights that were particularly helpful? So the one insight we're diving in today is what that key difference is between those two roles. And it surprised me. I'm going to be really curious to know whether it surprises you too, or whether it's something that you expected. I heard it first mentioned when the very first Chief People Officer guest, John Scrooby, answered the question that I asked every single person who came on the show, which is, what is the difference between those two roles? So he mentioned it and I thought, oh gosh, that's interesting. And then it came up again with another Chief People Officer guest. And then it came up again and again and again until I realized, okay, we're onto something now. There clearly is something in this. This is something that everyone is sharing, but they all talked about it in very slightly different ways. So I'm going to share clips from their answers with you so that you can see exactly what it was that they were saying that was unique to each of them, but all had the same overall message. And to put you out of your suspense, the same overall message was that when you step up to become a Chief People Officer, instead of being the leader of a function, so instead of just leading the HR team, you become a leader of the business. And if you're thinking, well, what on earth does that mean, Faye? Then don't worry. Hopefully, when you get to listen to the clips from those episodes in a minute, it will all become clear. And I've also got a little bit of an analogy for you to help bring it to life. So I don't know if you've ever seen a monster truck. I had never seen a monster truck in real life until earlier on this year. And I got to climb up and sit in one. Now, if you haven't seen what they look like, they are absolutely enormous, much, much, much bigger than a normal truck. It has huge wheels that are the size of a person. I mean, I'm really, really tall, so I am taller than the wheels. But I think if you're about 5'5" or beneath that, that wheel is going to be bigger than you. So they're enormous. You have to climb up a little ladder just to even get in and sit behind the steering wheel. And when I was being helped up into the seat, the person who was helping me explained about driving it. I mean, I wasn't actually brave enough to drive it, but if I had wanted to, she explained how to drive it. And she said, instead of when you're driving a normal car and you look through the windscreen and you look straight ahead, it's really different with a monster truck. You have to actually lean your head out of the side window because the wheels are so thick. You have to be able to look around the side so you can line them up properly. The front of the truck is so big and so high up that you can't see brilliantly immediately what's in front of you. It's really important to look round the side. And as she was saying that to me, I suddenly thought, this is a perfect analogy. It's just like when you're working in HR. So if you are an HR director or you're in a senior level role within the HR team, it's very likely that you're just focused on HR. You're just focused on making sure your HR function is as good as it can possibly be. You've probably spent years developing deep expertise in all sorts of things HR and people related. You may have a very specialist remit. You might just specialize, for example, in HR business partnering or in learning and development or in organization design or in talent acquisition. Or it might be that you have a really broad remit and you look after several or all of those different things. Well, when you're doing that, then actually you're probably not looking out the side. You're not necessarily hugely in depth thinking about what are the other components of this monster truck. If, for example, HR is one component of it, what is my deep understanding of operations and marketing and sales and engineering and customer service and whatever all the other business functions might be? You may have a bit of an understanding of them, but you won't necessarily have a deep, deep understanding and a real understanding of what the challenges are that the business is up against. When you're leaning your head out the side, you're helping steer the entire organization, not just the HR function. So you're looking up, you're looking out that window and you're seeing, are there any bumps in the road that are about to come our way? Are there any obstacles we're going to need to navigate around? How can we make sure we've chosen a path, a journey that we're driving towards and we're going to stick to? So to help bring this monster truck analogy to life even more, let's go ahead and hear from some of the fantastic Chief People Officer guests who we've had on the show. And we're going to start with the very first one who I already mentioned, and that is John Scrooby. Here is what he had to say.
The difference between being at that senior director, VP level versus executive is almost certainly the idea of ownership and accountability. If you're in a position where you can take any problem and any challenge and look at that problem or challenge and say, all right, this is for someone else, and I'm really glad I don't have to deal with that, and then go give it to them and give them that issue to go and solve, and sort of step back going, wow, let me go and pick up my list of things that I have to do. If you're doing that, you're working at director level. Right? If you have to take that problem and say, this is my problem, no matter whose remit it's in, this is as much my problem as it is the CTOs or the CPOs or the CROs or the CEOs. Let's go and work with those people, my peers, to figure out what the answer to this issue is. And if you never, ever let go of responsibility for sorting out that issue, then you're working at executive level. And I think that's the difference when you step into that chief people officer role. Nothing becomes somebody else's problem. Like every single thing that happens in the business is in some way your problem, your accountability that you have no escape from. And you really have to bring to bear all of your skills to try to work through those challenges, even though they sit somewhere else in the business.
And next, we're going to hear from Interim Chief People Officer Dotty Day, who joined us for episode 151 of the show.
The difference was I was the strategy maker. I was the person who would not only set the people agenda, but influence the business agenda on a much broader basis. As a head of, or I would envisage as a HR director in a divisional context, I implemented the corporate strategy. I contributed to the people agenda, but I wasn't accountable for all of it. And so suddenly moving to a chief people officer remit exposed me so much more in that strategic realm, in that commercial realm, in that questioning our marketing strategy, our proposition development, our operating model, and whether actually we should be targeting the US when we haven't actually quite nailed Europe, and looking at the cost benefit of a market entry strategy. These were all strategic interventions that prior to that, my focus was on the people agenda and the delivery of it alone. So whilst I was very interested in the wider business and the nuts and the bolts, my role didn't necessitate my involvement in that. And so actually the move to being a chief people officer, howsoever called, was much broader. And therefore my, I say, sphere of influence was much more business orientated than purely people agenda orientated. And that was the biggest difference I certainly experienced in the transition.
And now let's hear from fractional Chief People Officer Lorna Bains. And it was only when I was listening back to the clip of the episode with her, ready to make this one, that I realised, hopefully you'll think I picked a good analogy with the monster truck, because she talks about avoiding car crashes. So let's go ahead and hear what she had to say.
I think the biggest difference, and again, I'll caveat with this thing about job titles, because I know some people who are in HR director roles who are really doing a CPO job, and vice versa, etc., etc. But the question was, what's the key difference? And I think it is about creating, I think a CPO role is, by its nature, more strategic, whatever that actually means. But for me, it's about creating a vision for the future and steering an organization towards that. And it's about being able to, and I think this is a unique requirement of CPOs, is being able to look around the corner and potentially look around the corner at an upcoming car crash and find ways to mitigate or avoid that car crash. That's on the negative side. But also to look around the corner at trends in society, trends in the future of work, trends in your industry and your sector, and that impact people today and will impact in the future. So it's much more future focused, I think, is the key difference.
Next, we have Dr. Andy Stephenson, who was one of our most recent guests on episode 155.
For myself, at the simplest level, is a head of or a people director, whichever you want to call them, is fundamentally about optimizing the function and what it delivers for the business. Whereas I think a CPO, a CHRO, whatever you want to call it, you are more working on the business and using the people lever across the breadth of all the other functions that you have, and you just happen to deliver optimized people processes for it, usually through a good team. But it's much more, I am a business leader more than I'm a functional leader. And I think that applies across the entire C-suite. Again, one of the things I think about is, which team are you in? And I find at all levels of management and leadership, very often people think the team they are in is the one they lead, the people that report to them. And you get truly effective when people start to think that the team they are in is their peer group. And that actually they are managing and leading the team below to deliver in that. But if everyone starts to think of their peers as their team, and that they're then optimizing success below them, then you tend to have a much more powerful organization. So I think fundamentally it's working at a business level as opposed to delivering at a functional level. That's how I see the difference between the two roles. And they're both actually completely critical to the business being successful. So, those people in those head of and director roles have got to deliver a tremendous job, and they've got to be leading their function brilliantly. But I think when you step up, you've just got to have much more breadth.
And finally, here is what our most recent CPO guest, Nebel Crowhurst, had to say about becoming a business leader.
The shift goes from being, I think, somewhat more operational as a HR director, whilst there is absolutely a strategic oversight, into being much more of a strategic business leader. So I think you go from being accountable and responsible solely for the HR agenda into being accountable and responsible in partnership with the rest of the C-suite of the overall organisation, and being a contributor to how you shape the business. So your breadth of accountability shifts, and you're more exposed to conversations with perhaps business investors and the business owners, whatever that structure looks like, given the different type of business. Your awareness around risk is wider. I think you kind of focus more so just on your HR risk when you're in that HRD role or in a head of HR role. And actually, as you become a member of the executive leadership team in the C-suite, you've got to think about risk more holistically.
I hope that getting to see or hear all of those clips in a row, one after the other, really helped to shine a light on what that key difference is between being an HR director and being a chief people officer. Because all of those chief people officers are explaining and describing exactly the same thing, that step up to becoming a business leader when you're steering the whole organization, not just the HR or people function. I'd love to hear what you think about this. Was it a surprise for you, this key difference? Or was it something that you were expecting me to say? Are you already stepping up at that level? Are you a business leader right now? Or is it something that you'd like to do in the future? It's always so good to hear from you. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. You can leave me a comment underneath the YouTube video, or you can always reach me on LinkedIn. Just search for me on there by name. So my name is Fay, which is spelt without an E on the end, and my surname is Wallis, which is Wallis. Then finally, before I say goodbye for now, I just wanted to reassure you that if you're feeling a little bit nervous about that step up, if you're thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know if I've got it in me to be a business leader, I don't know if I can develop that knowledge about the business and the environment around it and anticipate what the challenges are going to be, then I just want to reassure you that there are going to be more of these solo episodes. And in the future, I'm planning on inviting some expert guests on the show as well to help share with you how you can do this and how you can thrive as an HR leader in all sorts of ways. The next episode I'm going to record for you is going to be all about developing your business acumen. So I hope that this episode has explained what the difference is, and then the next episode is going to help you realize how you can achieve it and how you can do it in ways that don't feel overwhelming. So I'm looking forward to being back again in 2 weeks' time with that episode all about business acumen for you.